Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe's sensational Sunday with 6 matches on deck. Casie versus Bunnyhoppor is what we're about to get into right now, and so that means we are awaiting word on the picks in bans during this. And there they are. That Divine Shield bubble around a class, it means that's the one that's been protected prior to the ban phase. It was ineligible for that. And so we have Priest protected over on Casie's side. We have Shaman protected over on Bunnyhoppor's side. This seems to be kind of a trend for him. He keeps winning with Shaman. And then as a result, Priest banned away from Bunnyhoppor in this one like his previous series. And then Casie's Shaman has been banned away. So a lot of respect for Shaman on Bunnyhoppor's side. And honestly, I think if I had to do a side-by-side comparison of just about anybody in the world and Bunnyhoppor on Shaman, I think he's been exhibiting why he has so much respect for that deck.
Yeah, I foolishly doubted his mental processing the other week, where Admirable called something out and was like, you know, he really elegantly set this up where he constantly had a taunt in play. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how much of a game plan that was. Like, he just got handed a bunch of Titanic lackeys. And then Bunnyhoppor messages was like, no, that was deliberate. Admirable was 100% right. I was doing that the whole time. I was like, well, we got a badass over here. Fair enough. But he is just on that level. And it was honestly, it was his Shaman play that prompted that question I talked about in the pre-show, right? Where he said, you know, people keep saying that Shaman loses this matchup, isn't super good in this matchup, but I just keep winning with it. I don't really know why. And I said, well, have you considered you're just the best? And I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
He is.
It's pretty darn close. A lot of the play that I think he's shown makes sense. Where it's, to me, Quest Shaman has some very deliberate objectives it wants to accomplish in certain matchups.
Yeah.
And when you take that into account, I think what that means is you look at it from an overhead perspective and you go, okay, well, how do I make that happen? Well, you just work towards that. If it means a random outcome, it means try to set up a scenario that best, bolsters that random outcome. How do you best support that and make that mechanism work? Playing a game of Hearthstone you're always going to do the same thing every single time. It's finding the path to that place you need to get to.
Yep.
And for Bunnyhoppor, I think he's demonstrated a very deep understanding and very clear imaging of what that path looks like. You're not always going to get there, but it's a game of percentages. Try your hardest.
Casie tried his hardest to summon a Northshire cleric into his hand.
He's trying his hardest to amass patience in this contrast of styles as well.
Yeah, there's a super interesting dynamic between these two because they are friends and they are practice partners. Bunnyhoppor is probably top 5 slowest players in the world in terms of competitive Hearthstone. Casie is certainly top 5 fastest players in the world. So we've asked the question before, how do you guys stomach practicing together so much? Surely you just get frustrated with the speed of play. And Casie mentioned to me that actually, in practice, Casie is the one that's roping, and Bunny gets frustrated with him for roping in practice games, which just sounds ridiculous to me.
It kind of makes sense to me. With what I was just talking about with Bunnyhoppor, he needs to get into a situation where he's like, okay, what do I need to do from here to win?
Yeah.
So, quickly get through your practice games, find tough situations.
Yeah, sure.
And for Casie, he plays a lot of muscle memory.
Right.
He needs to figure out what to do.
This is where I have to learn things so that when I play, I can just comfortably play fast and be happy about it.
It doesn't make sense, but it does. And that's the beauty of the situation.
Yeah.
And for Bunnyhoppor, this Sludge Slurper is making all the sense in the world because I am picturing a particular set of lackeys that gets the job done here.
Cue Liam Neeson voice. It's a particular set of lackeys.
And if Goblin Lackey's here, I will find you. I think he's already trying to think about, am I going to evolve if I get an Evolve Lackey? Do I shoot first if I get Shoot Lackey?
If I get Faceless Lackey, am I going to play it, or am I going to hold it for the same turn I play this Mogu Flesh Shaper?
Zap.
Beaming Psychic might have something to say about this, though. Let's see what Casie ends up on.
Well, it's going to say, I got you, friend. But yeah, it's something to say about it.
Hey, I got you, friend.
And Bunnyhoppor finds himself in a world of trouble. Northshire Cleric is a heck of a card.
Now, a card we've really talked about being drawn on Bunnyhoppor's side. We've talked about Northshire Cleric a lot. Witchwood Piper, though, we talk about this debate about card number 30 in Quest Shaman, or Admirable would argue card number 27, 28, 29, and 30 because he's...
I'm usually 28 through 30, but
okay. Yeah. We'll just, take the 2 former champs out, right? And then replace them.
I didn't bring it up.
Last night, Admirable was actively rooting against streamers because they were playing former champ in their deck. Like, just in their Twitch chat. It's like, I hope you lose, you have former champ in your deck.
It's when the former champ gets drawn. That's when I root against them.
But Witchwood Piper... Witchwood Piper picked a peck of people. Witchwood Piper is a very interesting card to me because... It's not one I considered in this spot, but actually, a lot of the time, if you complete quest, and sometimes you have this dry hand because you've played out all these kind of low-value Battlecry cards to complete your quest, Witchwood Piper draws you, Novice Engineers and Evil Cable Rats and Sludge Slurpers, depending on what you have left in your deck, they're all resource generators. They're all things that can fill up an empty hand. Actually starts to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, it almost always draws Sludge Slurper. I think part of that is curve consideration, too, where if it's your 5th Battlecry minion, your turn 5 is going to look like Sludge Slurper for the 6th, 2 mana to hero power, and then 2 mana to play a thing. I toyed with this a little bit early on, and, auxiliary thing, it's also like a reasonable evolve target. I ended up just going through so many iterations that I couldn't figure out a way to fit this card in. But it is something I wanted in the deck just because I want another mechanism of gas. Like, I want to find key things, and, lackeys post-quest are a very key thing. For Bunnyhoppor here, though, facing down the Northshire Cleric, the Beaming Sidekick, and then extra arms to boot, I think this one's going to be too tough for him to really climb out of. He needs a lot of help to get to this one. And so right now, that was the mutate he drew. It's try to find a way to use Mogu Flesh Shaper and mutate. That's your way back into this game.
Yeah, I don't know what the standard practice is in this matchup, but honestly, like, apart from the absolute key premium early game battle cries, Flesh Shaper Mutate is just what I look for in my mulligan against Priest, because you need just something absurdly powerful to be able to fight back against what they're doing a lot of the time, and that's about the most absurdly powerful thing you can do in the early game.
I think there's a lot of different ways that people view the matchup. I don't think that anybody's wrong in how they view the matchup. As long as you're just developing a proactive game plan from the get-go, I think that's the most important factor. I've talked at length about how I think it's important to hang on to Wasps and try to just get lucky and play for the right tempo. I, still right now stand firmly by that, but there's a number of different ways you can get to those spots.
This could now be the turn for Bunnyhoppor.
Yeah.
Eric could go down and be replaced with an 8-drop. I can't talk today. I'm stuttering so much. What is happening?
Par for the course.
What?
I don't know. I just felt like throwing some shade at you.
I'll have you know my diction is fantastic.
Ooh.
Nothing. Goblin Lackey makes things interesting now as well. Ooh, big bad voodoo. Bunnyhoppor now absolutely exploding onto this board.
Yeah, I mean, this Witchwood Piper creates exactly this kind of scenario.
Yep.
I think it's super interesting.
This is smart. I am trying this tonight. I like this choice.
Oh! Oh my! That is massive.
Yeah, it's a 3/12.
You talk about 8 drops that can win you the situation. That's the one. That is just...
Casie just can't make a board.
That's just good luck. Like, if a guy's going to play well and he's going to get lucky, whoo, you got a really tough time ahead.
GLHF.
Seriously, my gosh. This makes me just want to figure out how to discount Batterhead and just put it in my deck. I don't think you could do that, but it makes me want to try.
It makes me want to play Witchwood Piper in Quest Shaman. That's what I'm interested in. Because in reality, like that, we can focus back on that point, right? He would not have had this big handful of resources if he didn't have a Witchwood Piper pulling out that Sludge Slurper on the previous turn. That's what enabled this whole turn. The random evolve effect certainly paid it off huge, but it just wouldn't have been a possibility without that resource generation.
So now, Bunnyhoppor's hand is a bit slow to capitalize on this. If he wants to get past everything, he pretty much has to invest his board. But honestly, it feels like something he might be kind of happy with. I'm also looking at Bog Slosher, the Goblin Lackey.
Yeah, exactly. Bog Slosher Rush Guy, and then just start batter-heading your way through.
I mean, that's 7 attack that's on board, and I see 8 health on a Batterhead. And Casey's seeing it too. He's like, oh my gosh, like just so many bad things that happens.
Yeah.
And there are.
It just looks so perfect, right? Bog Slosher back the rush, replay the rush, use the Bog Slosher to soften up the Tolvir, do all the bat ahead things, and then it's at 1 health, so next turn you have your big bad Voodoo on a 1 health thing to trade in again. Like, it just lines up so nicely.
I guarantee you Bunnyhopper's thinking about Wild Pyromancer on the backswing of it. And so, you know, I think Big Bad Voodoo is very much in his mind. You know, he could very easily trade over his board and then make that same trade down, leave himself with a 3-1 that already has Big Bad Voodoo on it. But then if you're going to take into account Wild Pyromancer, you got to think about Silence in the same way. And so I think if you're looking for maximum output, it's this line right here.
Yeah, I agree. I think dropping the Big Bad Voodoo on the turn that you're going to trade it out makes a lot of sense.
And if that's going to be the case, preserve the health in that against Wild Pyromancer and trade off the 1/1s.
Keep full health on the bat ahead. Why use 2 1/1s? Or why keep 2 1/1s when Pyro is the turn you're scared of? Excellent execution from Bunny again.
I think Casey's done. Priest is all about taking the board and keeping it. It has very few ways to really come back from this kind of position, and it's going to have to be some sort of misstep from Bunnyhoppor at this point. So play to that. How do you best get Bunnyhoppor to mess up? I'm looking at 2 injured Blade Masters in a circle.
Make
but
2 4/7s, yeah.
I'm looking at that healing a bog up to a 4/4. Not relevant necessarily on this board, but the Batterhead becoming a 3/8 again.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want that.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Looks like he's playing for Bwansamdi turns then. And that's, the floodgates are open.
Can make the Voodoo happen this turn, right, if he wants to.
Yeah, I'm curious if you're interested in taking that immediately, or if you're more interested in just delivering damage with the Voodoo active. And I mentioned, oh boy. Oh boy. This is not going to get pretty. Perhaps interested in Witchy Lackey on the Bog Slosher. Yeah, Casie, I feel you. Silent Jiraxis.
Yes, nothing. Just like, hi, 315. What's up?
How did it go from a 312 to 315? That's weird.
Oh, you mean bat ahead to Jiraxis?
Yeah,
Right,
that's just
right.
weird. You can bounce back the Jiraxis. It's a battle cry.
Your Shudderwalk just starts transforming you into Jiraxis over and over again.
Wait, how would that work?
What do you mean?
Wouldn't the Shudderwalk become your hero then?
Card text is exactly destroy your hero and replace it with Lord Jiraxis.
Okay,
not
this
minion. Yeah.
Okay.
It's always bothered me that it says destroy your hero on there. I feel like if you destroy your hero, you've lost the game.
Not if you replace it.
Well, order of operations, right?
Colossus of the Moon. Oh god, that's just way too much piling up. Another life drinker in hand as well. Casie does not have a way. He just literally does not have a way to check this Colossus. So unless he draws a taunt and gets out of this somehow.
He can only heal to 17, and he needs to do that while clearing the entire board, apart from this Colossus, just to be 1 out of range of this second life drinker in Bunny's hand. That is currently where Casey's game is at.
I must consider.
There's no denying the fortune that fell upon Bunnyhoppor this game, but Witchwood Piper really was the activator for all of this. Just a lot of gas in hand.
Is someone injured?
Do you like to play with fire?
4 cards coming. He's got to find ways to clear and taunt. Looking like
mostly bricks to me so far.
From Casey's perspective, he's alive.
Yeah.
From our perspective, he is not. Bunnyhoppor going to take game 1.
Yep, he had that too, Casie.
Woo!
I think Casie justified to feel a little bit aggrieved just in that bat ahead in a single swoop, really. Well, actually, in multiple swoops when you think about it. It's a bat ahead, that's how it works. Really just took Casie out of the game in that position. But I'll say it again, I think Bunny put himself in a position with a tech choice to make that happen. Yes, he drew his one-off tech card, which is not always going to have an impact all the time. But it really was the game changer there. It created a situation where a big roll off a thing that he engineered, thing he was playing for, long game. He took a zap, he held it, he drew a mutate, he held it. Mogu Flesh Shaper held onto it, tried to get in a position where they would all go together for a swing turn, because a swing turn against Priest is what's massively important. And then the Witchwood Piper plays into that as well. And yeah, he got probably the actual nuts in that scenario off that evolve. But who's to say just a big 8-drop wasn't going to be good enough to win the game at that point?
Exactly. That's kind of the point that I want to get at, too. It's just the Mutate Mogu Flesh Shaper combo and how important it is and how vital it is. It is there for matchups that you're not favored in. And with the matchups that you are favored in, it's actually just not that good of a thing. Like, you want the rest of your cards that double up on battle cries.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think Batterhead is pretty much the shining example of one that's good in that situation. But if you're going to tell me that Tyrion or what's the Ironbark Tree Folk or whatever it is, like
Ironbark Protector.
Ironbark Protector
Exactly what I was gonna
8/8
say.
taunt, like just something big and in the way that doesn't have 5 health a la Undertaker.
Right.
I think is one of the key hits there. You know, sometimes you're going to hit Hyreek, sometimes you're going to hit something bigger. Like there's low rolls and there's high rolls, and this gun comes away with a high roll and massively wins the game as a result.
Nothing really further to add on top of that. I think it was a great sign in Hearthstone coming together of just a player playing well, executing a strong game plan, getting rewarded for it with a good outcome. Happens sometimes. Don't have to be mad at it.
Nope, never mad at it. I thought it was kind of cool to watch.
Oh, it was sweet.
Just big, powerful things. Sorry, Casie. We got to go to a break. When we come back, it's game number 2 of Casie taking on Bunnyhoppor in our first match of 6 for today.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the mark, it's an ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
My name is Elias Sibelius and I go under Boston. My username actually comes from my cat. His name is Boston, so I just took that and made it a bit cooler with the triple Z. So yeah, shout out to him. When I got the confirmation that I was in Grandmaster, I was overwhelmed by emotions. Even though I haven't had the first place big tournament win, they actually appreciate that consistency and what I've been working for the last couple of years. I'm very good at focusing on a specific thing and keeping myself ready for the situation. Yeah, and my games and stuff like that. My favorite memory is still my first DreamHack. I remember facing Super JJ. I was a total newcomer, so it was very big for me to just be there and just realizing that I could actually beat all these players, and it was very cool. My personal goals for this year is I want to qualify for the playoff. Of course, I want to go to the global finals. That's, I think, everyone's goal, but I want to be one of the best players. I will try my best to get there, for sure.
My name is Christos Sakopoulos. My username comes from when I was a kid. I used to go to like an internet cafe with my friends to play like, I remember WoW and stuff like that. And I just had to make a character one day, and one of my friends said, your plays are phenomenal, so you can just put the name Phenomenal there. And I just did it, and then it just stuck. The thing that's unique about my playstyle, I feel, is that I sometimes think about stupid plays that other people would never even consider, and I try to get something out of it. I think people don't pay attention to details like trading or going face. I really pay attention to those things because I think it's super important. Like even one bad trade can cost you the game a lot of times. My favorite memory was definitely when I won my first Hearthstone tournament last year in HCT Orange County. And doing that just gave me so much more confidence and made me feel like I was free again. I'd say being in Grandmasters means that I've made it to the top players of Europe, which has always been my goal. So yeah, I'm looking forward to start competing again.
Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. It is a sensational Sunday here with 6 matches on deck. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora, joined by Simon Sottle Welch, and we are amidst our first series with Casie and Bunnyhoppor. And right now, Bunnyhoppor's got a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, it's off to a great start, and you know, we set it up at the start. You've picked Bunnyhoppor in this one. I've picked Casie. Obviously, Casie, a good friend, good teammate of mine, as well as a fantastic player. It's more of a heart pick, although, you know, I think it's very close on the front of just picking it cold and analytically. I think Bunnyhoppor is perhaps, for me, the best player in the world, but Casie is very, very close to that. We've talked at length about how just about everyone in Division B in Europe is, you know, potentially a top 10 player in Europe, if not in the world. That's just how incredible that standard is. And this matchup just kind of exemplifies that.
Yeah, I mean, these two being good friends and practice partners, they're not going to practice together if there is that much of a skill disparity. I can tell you that much. So I think it's just a razor's edge that defines the two. You know, like in my head, I'm maybe given a percentage, 1 to 2% over to Bunnyhoppor in this one, and that's just, you know, for me, that's given the standard that he set in the previous year. I think Casie had a fantastic previous year. Bunnyhoppor certainly was one of those years that you consider top-notch, where you look back at the old days and you go, ah, yes, back in '82, I could throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
American sports ball.
It's
thing.
old.
Pigskin is an American football, right? That's what it refers to?
It's a quote from Uncle Rico.
I don't know who that is.
Napoleon Dynamite?
Oh, I've only seen that movie like once. It was a long time ago.
A really long time ago, yeah. That movie's great.
Yeah.
You don't seem too fond of it.
I wasn't a huge fan, no.
Wasn't your thing?
No.
Okay.
Tell you what is my thing, though.
What's that?
Druid.
Yeah, now we're talking.
I had no idea where I was going with that when I started that transition.
You're like,
so, oh damn! Now I have to say something, and one of these classes is warrior. I'm kind of limited.
Nathan will get excited about anything. I'll just say something Hearthstone related.
Yeah,
that works. Ooh, I'll tell you where it doesn't work.
Go on.
Priest. Ah!
So Casie is not playing the Malagos Druid that a few players have brought into this week, just to spice things up a little bit, improve their matchups against some of the slower decks. He is instead playing the straight-up normie Druid, I guess, as we've started calling it, because it amuses me, if no one else. Deal with it.
Chef Normie?
Chef Normie, exactly. And he is, in fact, playing Chef Normie in the deck. So he has the full package in terms of being able to beat down warriors in this matchup, because he has the Nomi, he has the Feoris, he has the Cenarius, and crucially, he has at least the Enlightened on top of that as well. This is about as greedy as you can get with this Druid deck, and it should, asterisk, should pay dividends in this matchup, because we have been seeing an absolute anomaly of results in this matchup in Europe, where the warrior is currently favored in win rate in this matchup.
We did see Swids take this one down yesterday.
Yes, we did.
And it was against Hunterace, and I don't think Swids played up to you know, the top-notch standard that he could have played that hand in, but it was good enough to get the job done. He went 7 points deep into fatigue and was able to deliver a lethal blow in the face of a good outcome from Brawl. And so I look at Casie's deck here, and you know, one thing I'm noticing is missing right now is A, you didn't have coin. You love coin in this matchup, just because you get a card deeper in your deck. But B, he doesn't have Nourish. And 2 Worthy Expeditions in the deck. He's also included 2 copies of Power of the Wild. You know, the second Power of the Wild taking the place of second Ferocious Howl in this one. So a bit less cycling in terms of, you know, favoring being able to get on board and actually make some impact. So I do think that this matchup really boils down to whether or not Bunnyhoppor has early aggression and is able to capitalize on that. I think if that's missing, the job for him is about 10-fold harder than it normally would be, because he doesn't force anything from Casey's side.
Yes, and it's also, we mentioned that matchup yesterday with Swids and Hunterace. Hunterace's build of Warrior was double Brawl, double Plague of Wrath, like all of those extra removals packed in there. Bunny just has the single Plague of Wrath, so in terms of big sweepers that can interact with big Feoris and big Nomi boards, Bunnyhoppor's a little bit lighter, so it's even more important that he gets aggression going early, which Hunterace really didn't do in his matchup, but was still able to take it right down to the wire against Swids. But partly, as you mentioned, because I think we have some criticisms of just the late game sequencing of Swids' last few threats that he played out.
Yeah, not going to go into too much detail on it. You can always check out the match. Go check the VOD, play hearthstone.com/esports. Casie, a smile. I like happy Casie.
He's a happy boy.
To me, what I like about it is that Casie will take his emotions and just simply magnify them for the sake of not having to communicate how he's feeling. You just know. I don't know if that's actually why he does it, but I like to imagine that.
It's very interesting to me in one of his interviews that we show during the broadcast that he says that he used to be a very shy person, because I have never known that Casie. The first time I met Casie, he was, you know, I don't use the word loud because that sounds derogatory, but he is loud and outgoing and enthusiastic and a big personality always. And I was like, the idea of him being a shy person just is very strange to me.
I think enthusiastic was the word you were looking for.
I just kept going through words until I found it. We got there eventually.
Yeah. It sounds like my entire life. Just start using words, looking for the right one. Eventually I got there.
It takes you on average a bit longer than me, though. That's the problem.
Exhibit A. Well, if you're not going to draw Nourishes, I think Oasis Surger is a welcome second.
Yeah, it certainly is. Worth knowing that one of those Worthy Expeditions has gone down without being a Nourish, but 2 copies of that in the deck, which is not necessarily standard in itself, although I don't think there's really anything that we can call a standard build of Quest Druid at this point, because I think everyone's list is like 1 or 2 cards different from everyone else's.
2 Nourished, would that not be standard?
Did I say 2 Nourish?
Yeah.
I meant 2 Worthy Expedition.
You also said that card, but it sounded like to me the subject was Nourish. Okay, Worthy Expedition, yeah.
Yeah, the subject was Nourish, because I'm saying the fact he has 2 Worthy Expeditions means that he can, on average, find more Nourishes.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Semantics are starting early. That's how you know you're in for a wonderful day of Hearthstone with Soddle Anatomy Ball.
6 whole matches of this.
6 whole matches of pointless semantics. Yeah, I think Worthy Expedition is one of the slots that you can toy with. You know, for Casie, he's gone with 1 Innervate and 2 Worthy Expeditions. And I think that's a nod to specific matchups. You know, in quicker matchups, you probably want more Innervates. Right. In slower matchups, you almost certainly want more Worthy Expedition.
Yeah. If you play against an outright aggressive deck, you know, a Murloc Shaman or an aggro warrior or whatever, and you end up going first and you have no Innervates in your opening hand, like, you feel pretty dead a lot of the time in that situation. But it's just a good read. Those decks don't exist in Grandmasters, so, like, do you need those cards in your deck?
Well, Silver Name.
Don't exist in this week's Grandmasters.
He's playing later today.
He's not playing aggro warrior, though.
True story. He's playing Bomb Warrior, though. The honorary aggro warrior.
Oh, you're right. He is totally playing aggro warrior, yeah.
You know, Aggro Warrior, I think, is 0 and 6 in GM. Like, Frodan was talking about the stats yesterday because StrifeCrow had brought Mech Paladin, Aggro Warrior, Highlander Hunter. Like, he started to go back and do StrifeCrow things.
Right.
You know, back to his roots where he's like, I need my mental focus. I need to focus on what I'm doing right, and I need to focus on what other people are ignoring. Like, that is a pretty extreme way, I think, of how StrifeCrow historically has found his edge.
Yeah, sure.
He brought Aggro Warrior. It didn't get played, but Dan had brought up the stat that Aggro Warrior was 0 and 6 across Grandmasters.
Sounds about right to
me.
me.
One day. But that day is not today.
Bunnyhoppor picks up damaged Stegatron off his Frightened Flunky, which makes sense. I think one of the things he's really trying to do in this matchup is just make a big mech and try and magnetize things together. Beat away, get down some pressure. He's really failed to do so. Like, you can get the early curve, which is just, you know, one drops into Snip Snap and you just start pushing damage. Failing that, you're looking for these kind of mid-rangey mechs to get magnetized down onto. But when Casie already gets down an entire Oasis Surger ahead of the board, it's going to be very difficult for Bunny to get any pressure going at all, so he may just have to settle back into a resource game, try and use this Dr. Boom that he has in hand to grind out Casie for as long as he can.
Bunnyhopper's previous turn was really interesting, where he went with Frightened Flunky over a trade and the Dynamatic.
Yeah.
And I think there's a number of reasons why he's doing this. Number one, he wanted to get use out of Shield Slam, because he knows a likely turn from Casey's going to be Oasis Surger, and his answer to that is Super Collider. So, number one, checked. Use the Shield Slam before you take a bunch of damage. Number two, the Dynamatic is going to be a much more significant threat than Frightened Flunky and 1/1 Town Crier are going to be. Casey's going to Oasis Surger, let him use it on those. Number three, it does give him the chance to find our Megadillo and then curve directly into that should he find himself a big taunt minion off the top, or just have a 4/7 in play. He pretty much did everything he could to try and set himself up for a fortunate-looking turn, all by taking a weaker turn this one to have stronger turns later. And I just think it's really interesting.
I've one other thing to add to that as well, with Dr. Boom Mad Genius in hand, Dynomatic is consistently like Shield Slam quality removal with no prerequisite, right? Like it's just 8 damage from hand anytime you want to.
Yeah.
Shield Slam is situational, and like you said, he's going to start using a Super Collider, so it's unlikely with this hand that he has any big stack of armor anytime soon.
Little things like that with Control Warrior add up to a big difference, because each sequence you take leads you down a different future path. And for a lot of decks, they play fairly linear, and what is mostly about is understanding how the matchup's going to work and more timings than the little things that matter. Like with Warrior, it's macro game plan and micro game plan simultaneously, which is a tough thing to do throughout the entirety of the game. There's a certain point where your hand dictates so much of what you do, but those little decisions impact so much of the future. It's one of the reasons why I consider it such a difficult deck to play, albeit very powerful.
Spell Damage Wrath is looking pretty exciting right now.
You're standing on a Super Collider, though.
That is a huge problem,
yeah. You lose the Lodi and you lose the taunt.
Yeah, and there's no other minion you can use to really get around that.
So if you're going to do it, put something in the middle.
I guess, yeah, I misspoke. You can just put the Power of the World in the middle. Just wasn't registering that as a minion.
There's a risk to it, but that's a tough one. That's a tough one for Bunnyhoppor to check very efficiently.
And it's just a really solid payoff anyway, right? Like, you're pushing 7. And the downside is that your opponent uses a resource to kill a 4/3 and then takes 7 more by hitting the hidden Oasis minion. Like, yeah, okay.
Bunnyhoppor hasn't used coin yet, and that tells me for Casie that this is the right timing to, make the most aggressive push that you can.
That's a great point, too.
Force them off of Dr. Boom. That card being 9 mana is so much harder to play if you don't have directly Shield Slam next to it.
Right.
For Bunnyhoppor, you just got bigger things to worry about. There's nothing clean here. I think it's Super Collider Ziliax.
Oof. That's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about it, too. It's just, if that's not going to be good enough, roll the dice, I guess. Ooh. Yeah, that's a big cost if you do that. It doesn't work.
Well, if you get 1 hit on the Power of the Wild, you can just Hero Power Shield Slam to take care of it, right? It's still a big risk to just guarantee getting 1. You do still then get the full clear.
I think the reason this has the most benefit is because it does prompt more action from Casie, and that yields more life over to Bunnyhoppor at that point. So Swipe is the direct card you don't want to see. But perhaps you have a way to check out of this with the Dr. Boom, Coin, and Shield Slam.
Yeah, sure.
Is that your way out? Casie just going to take that time to simply pressure the Super Collider. Says, take away 2 of my minions. You're taking a lot of damage. And for Bunnyhoppor, I think that is a key moment. The fact that Casie did not have a super strong turn against it. About halfway through the deck, no Nourish.
Yeah, similar story to what we saw. I believe it was that same Swids game we were talking about where he did get very, very deep into his deck before he found his first Nourish. Similar point in the game, about halfway through, if not more, before that first Nourish appeared. After, you know, it's a card that you're mulliganing for, it's a card that you're specifically looking for from Worthy Expedition. It's an interesting line from Casie, though. He essentially gives up one of his 5/5s to the Super Collider swing. But his payoff for that is to say, well, I need to have this other 5/5 on board. I'm willing to give up half of my Oasis Surger to make sure that the other half attacks. I mean, the Shield Slam is what specifically punishes that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Bunnyhoppor running with the two copies of Super Collider this week. I will say that's something that I don't like. I think that it's a bit much for Warrior. The way that you beat Warrior right now is you pressure it down. You're not gonna outlast the deck, and so I think that 2 Super Colliders it's got a hefty cost to it. But you know what? Your deck doesn't need to do everything; it needs to do enough. And if that means using your life total as a resource aggressively enough, so be it. I think we may be seeing a forego of the Discovery this turn.
Second Super Collider does look pretty fantastic right here.
I mean, if you're going to put 2 of them in, you can't wait forever to use the second one. Right. Take your advantage while you can.
Job done.
Oh.
One of those in the deck. He cut one from the deck specifically looking at matchups like this so he doesn't get dead draws like that in the late game.
Yep.
Still finds the one.
There's one checkpoint that Casie has to cross, and it's Nourish. He had a Worthy Expedition chance for it. He had the 2 natural draws for it. Neither showed up.
This is a big loss for Casie if he ends up throwing down the Scenarios, which he does. That's his Forbiddeness Fluke gone, which is not just a single copy of a huge minion like Chef Nomi gone, but multiple copies when you factor in what you can do with Elise the Enlightened on top of that as well.
And Casie he decides to just go in the risk. He says, I can't beat Warpath, can't beat Brawl, can't beat Plague, can't beat nothing. You just gotta have it. You just gotta not have it.
I think, yeah.
It's the right call.
I mean, more importantly, if he does very little this turn, he's just conceding tempo to just mechs, right? Like just Tomb Warden, Dynomatic, second Omega Devastator, like all of these things just goes Hidden Oasis Pass. And Bunny just has the board this turn. At least make him continue to be behind by using that removal.
Exactly. You're going to have to, if you draw Nourish, you have to take a turn off for it. Yep. So try to stay ahead. There's always that tiny chance that Bunnyhoppor just doesn't have it. Or doesn't use it. Much cleaner way to do it. The key to this matchup is always hunt for ways to not use your AoE if you don't have to. You're going to need it later, so pay the price now.
Yikes.
Behold, jewels of the sun.
Casey's got 2 draws. If he does not find Nourish in the next 2,
there's a Nourish.
Schrodinger's Nourish, though.
Yep.
Once you open that box, that's when you find out.
Now Bunnyhoppor, which is with a weird inflection point, he is just slowly starting to ramp up pressure, but it's happening very late in the game, which is not really an iteration of the matchup that we've seen too much.
Well, it's also not an iteration that we've seen too much because Bunnyhopper's just outlasting him. Yeah, like he's outvaluing Casie. Like, that's not the common situation that occurs.
There you see the standard pile of incredibly unimpressive mechs that you get from Omega Assembly now after the nerf to the Discover waiting. Less warrior cards show up far less often in those Discover effects now.
All right. It took long enough. Bunnyhoppor reacts, but, I mean, you got to be happy it showed up now instead of sooner.
Yep.
Oh, Bunny. Casey's having to think about duplicating this hand. You get 2 defenders from it.
Need a hand,
you get another
Explorer?
innervate. You got to try to fight and stay in the game.
Is he double baiting a Power of the Wild here as well?
I think I like holding it just because I want to Cenarius Fate Wild and then Cenarius Fate Wild.
Okay. I can see that.
I think this turn was like enough, but there's justification for this too.
See, yeah, my counter to that is that I think before this Power of the World, if you look at that board, it's just too weak against what's in play. And like Bunnyhopper's just going to gain more tempo against it if you don't play the extra Power of the World, I think.
You know, it's interesting we arrive on the same conclusion for different reasons.
Okay.
So the reason I think it's okay is because your opponent's got a lot of stuff in play. Like, if they're going to AoE, who cares? They have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, no, we're saying the same thing.
Okay,
Right?
then.
You pulled a me on that one, where you were like, well, yeah, that's obvious.
I'm confused.
You know, like I always go to the second step, and then whoever's casting with me takes it back to the first step, and I go, forgot to mention that, because to me that was obvious.
Okay, then.
The Dynamatic that was held.
That fuse thing.
The time is now. Your software upload's complete.
The fuses!
Sure. Line it up perfectly.
Bunnyhoppor going to favor the health.
Yeah, sacrifices a 3-2 to keep a 3-4, but pushes 3 less damage for the cost.
It's kind of unusual, actually. We've seen most players favor damage.
I know. Well, I've at least heard you say that.
That's the first time I think I've seen a deviation from it all season. Aside from when trading was just a bad idea.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
I think Bunnyhoppor already has a master plan. If anyone that needs a master plan out of nowhere right now, it's Casie.
Maybe he's talking about, like, now's the good time to like, execute it.
All right. I'm on board.
Dr. Boom's about the here and now.
Mechanical Whelp. 9 points of rush from hand.
Look, that shows up more often with discovery changes.
I mean, yes, that is true.
That fuse thing.
And now with this missile launcher in hand, I mocked it, said the kind of the standard pile of garbage mechs that you get now, but that missile launcher is magnetic and it's 5 extra damage coming out from hand. Which means Casie is under serious threat right now.
You don't see him take a lot of time on turns, and you're a quarter of the way in, and Casey's still thinking, that's a lot of Casie time.
I love this aggressive push this turn as well from Bunny. He knows the contents of the hand is Power of the Wild, Cenarius, Mystery Card, and the draw for the turn. So he evaluates that and says, well, my opponent's most likely play, or the play they most want to make, is just to jam another Cenarius. If I go face here, I just have lethal in that scenario, so he can't do that. He has to divert and do something else.
Yeah, Casie just making a small error, unless he intends to go face. Hope that's not one of those spots where you just go, I already made the mistake, so I might as well go face instead then. It's technically better.
I confess I was making polite eye contact with you. What did he do?
He just killed the 3-3 and then went face instead of killing the 4 and then killing off the taunt.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Either way, I don't think he was getting out of this game clean. So that's 2-0 Bunnyhoppor.
Yet again, Warrior over Druid. Time after time after time.
Well, so there's some things I want to talk about, and it's about the way that the deck is built and some comments that I've heard, mostly watching Viper stream. I talked a lot on day one about how Viper, the day the patch came out, was lamenting how hurt Warrior was by the matchup, or by the discovery patch. And something he was talking about was he doesn't necessarily believe that Druid in its quest play a bunch of minions iteration was necessarily favored versus Warrior. And he thinks if he was talking about in a roundabout way, if you play it clean enough and your deck is built right, he's like, I think you can get the edge. And I was like, whoa.
I mean, I think it's a pretty reasonable stance at this point. Like, we were ridiculed in week 1 or 2 for kind of talking about this. Like, maybe this matchup is better than we think. And, we were using hyperbole here and there to exaggerate the point. And yeah, sure, call us out on that. But I think the point we're reaching at is that I don't think this matchup is as free as a lot of people started off saying it was.
Well,
and I think that is very much the case.
There's two other things to look at, too. Casie in that matchup is effectively hard mulliganing for Crystal Merchant and for Nourish. He did that, didn't find either. The thing you have to account for is how much different the matchup is coin versus non-coin. You have to think about how much difference it is when Casie draws Nourish early or Bunnyhoppor doesn't have Dr. Boom early. There's a lot of factors that account into it, and I think that this is one of those matchups you need a big sample size in order to really see.
Sure. I will say emphatically, I believe the way that Casie has that deck built with Nomi, Feoris, Elise, Zephyrus, everything in there. Like, yes, he is overwhelmingly favored against Warrior, but there's still a failure rate. Nourish is a key card. It's a problem when your deck just relies on that one card in certain matchups. Sometimes you just gas out and you get beaten up.
Let's ask someone who's an expert on the matter.
Sure.
Let's ask Bunnyhoppor. Bunnyhoppor, can you hear us?
Yep.
Congratulations on the win here. There's been a hotly debated topic amongst the Druid versus Warrior matchup and who's actually favored in that one. I heard Viper talking on stream a bit about how he thinks that in certain circumstances that Warrior can actually be favored in that one. I wanted to hear your take. When and if that's the case, and what your thoughts on this particular one between you and Casie was.
So the one that Casie and I played is favored, I think, for the Druid. We played like 20-something games of this against varying Druid lists, and against varying Druid lists, I went 13-11 in the end of this matchup with the Warrior. But against Casey's list, like with the Nomi and the Pharaohs and the Zephyrus and the double power of the wild, you do get there as a Druid. Like if you don't draw Nourish, you have a big problem, obviously. And the double Super Collider does make this a lot better, right? Because I just have so much stall where I don't need to use brawls and stuff like that. And even in the late game, you have some game. I would even say that before the nerfs came in, against the standard list that everybody was playing, the Warriors favored.
Interesting to hear. So I want to talk to you about pick and ban process, because obviously you pretty much have a mirrored lineup, but the picks and bans ended up different. You protected your Shaman, he protected Priest. Is that just because you're a big fan of Shaman? Was there some mind games going on? Like, what was happening?
Yeah, like, he loves playing Priest, I think. I rather prefer Shaman. So I don't know, I'm not the greatest fan of someone injured, but I don't know, it's a little bit like it depends on what you think the other person wants to rather play, what they feel more comfortable with. I think in our specific series, both of the protects and bans are like, his makes a little bit more sense, but I think like if you know that he is like a priest expert and I'm more of a shaman expert, then the bans make sense, right? Because I think overall they're kind of even. Like you can decide whichever one you want, and then you do it where you feel more comfortable.
So that how much did that weigh into your equation of being like an expert on the class? Because some of the trends that I've noticed are like people protect a class, they tend to queue it first. If people have priest, it goes into game one. Like the shaman versus priest matchup is pretty much considered to be priest favored, like pretty distinctly. And I think by that pattern, it was the match that I expected to take place. I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on that matter, because that's very interesting to me that you're choosing Shaman simply because you consider yourself a Shaman expert.
Well, okay, so the matchup is definitely favored for the Priest. But the thing is, if you pick Priest in this series, like if I pick Shaman in this series, the other person's Warrior is very, very weak, because it basically just only has unfavorables and a mirror. Whereas if you pick Priest in this series, you have to be kind of afraid of your opponent figuring out that you run Priest first game, and then they can queue Warrior first game, and if you expect that, you can queue your Druid into it or the Shaman. Like, so the whole thing about like, if you just look at the matchup, if you just like, okay, I protect this and I always queue it first, then protecting Priest is the right thing. But I wasn't sure I was gonna queue the Shaman in the first game.
Gotcha.
And then it comes down to a lot of mind games, and you think what the other person wants to do. Are they affected by blah blah blah? Like, you know.
Yeah, blah blah blah.
Exactly.
That's the interview I expect.
Makes perfect sense.
Yada yada over the best part.
Before we let you go, I do just want to get one piece of input on Witchwood Piper in the Shaman, because I remember I looked at the deck list. I was like, actually, this isn't a card I consider, but it makes a lot of sense. I gave some thoughts on it like during the game, but I'd like to hear just your reasons for putting it in the deck, just uninfluenced.
So some guy in my chat told me to put in Witchwood Piper while I was streaming. And
Stop
actually
taking advice
Yuing-
from random people, Bunny. First it was me, then it was some guy in
Oh,
your
it's
chat.
working. It's working. Don't tell him what to do.
Okay,
Keep going.
I tried it out on ladder, and it was the complete nuts because
Okay.
this deck, like whenever, like after quest, you play this card, you draw your Slurpers. The Slurpers give you 2 more lackeys each, and you basically you have like 2 turns to find anything else that generates some value. It lets you play a lot more aggressively with your Battlecry pre-quest than the deck would usually be, where you just sometimes you don't make the best play to be able to hold back a Battlecry for after the quest. And with the Witchwood Piper, it's like really good. And Yuging, the Chinese player, he plays a lot in the European server as well. He's piloted the deck where this is in as well. Like I think rank 1 or 2 legend, something like that. So that's I think where the original inspiration came from.
Wow. That's super cool to hear. Shout out to Guy in the chat.
Thanks, guy in chat.
Thanks, Guy in chat. And thank you, Bunnyhoppor. It's always a pleasure talking to you and hearing your thoughts on the matter. Congratulations on your win. You're moving up to the top of the standings so far, but we got 5 more matches to go. So looking forward to seeing you play next week.
Thank you.